Donald Trump's campaign is sweating. We are now a few days out from the guilty verdict, and we have some new polling that could tell us how this trial will impact the 2024 election. And that was one of the big questions coming out of the trial. Other than what will Donald Trump's sentencing look like, a lot of people were wondering, will this have any effect on the 2024 election? And if so, how will it affect it? And we finally have some data to go through that could tell us the answers. And there have been a few dominant schools of thought on this topic. A lot of people think that Donald Trump has been through so much after the Access Hollywood tapes, after the scandals during his presidency, the impeachments, January 6th, and finally this conviction. A lot of people think this won't really move the needle. A lot of his core supporters, a lot of his loyal fan base will still vote for him no matter what. And while I think that's true, I think that Donald Trump has a lot of loyalists, another school of thought was that this will shave off a sizable portion of independent voters and could actually change the results of the election. But we finally have some polling data that could tell us what the real answer is. So this new Morning Consult poll says 49% of independents think Trump should drop out post-guilty verdict. This article from Axios reads, one of the first polls conducted since a New York jury found Donald Trump guilty of falsifying business records find that a significant minority of Republicans and independents want him to drop out, and a majority of registered voters approve of the jury's decision. Why it matters. The Morning Consult poll conducted on Friday offers some of the first clues about how voters are reacting to this unprecedented situation. By the numbers, 54% of registered voters strongly or somewhat approve of the guilty verdict, compared to 34% who strongly or somewhat disapprove. So there's about a 20% margin there, but the majority of registered voters strongly or somewhat approve. 49% of independents and 15% of Republicans said Trump should end his campaign because of the conviction. 15% of Republicans, that is no small number. If even a small portion of that 15% decides not to vote for Donald Trump, that could definitely swing the election, because elections are won at the margins, so even a 2 or 3% swing could swing the election. The polls found the race effectively tied nationally in a one-on-one, with Biden at 45% and Trump at 44%. I mean, those numbers are still too close for comfort, in my opinion. We want Biden to be winning by more than 1%, because that is still within the margin of error. But if we can see Biden slowly edge out Donald Trump more and more, eventually there could be a 3 or 4 percentage point difference, then that is the goal. There might be a little bit of a delay as people get their information. It might take a few weeks to actually see a lot of this show up in polling, but reality check. While they may agree with the guilty verdict, the poll found that more voters think Trump should get probation, 49%, rather than go to prison. And this could largely be a function of Donald Trump's age. People see an old dude and they don't want to send him to prison. 68% of registered voters said the punishment should be a fine. Now, this isn't an indictment on whether or not Trump's guilty or not. This is probably, like I said, an indictment on Donald Trump's age. The poll also revealed some deep distrust of the criminal justice system. 3 in 4 Republican voters said the verdict made them feel less confident in the system, and 70% of GOP voters, as well as 43% of independents, said they believed the conviction was driven by motivation to damage Trump's political career. Now, these are some interesting numbers. 3 in 4 Republicans saying they feel less confident in the system is actually sort of a win for Donald Trump, because that comes straight out of the authoritarian playbook to undermine, to create distrust in our current system and our institutions. We've seen Donald Trump do this since day one, saying he was going to drain the swamp, saying he was going to end this deep state that he somehow became a part of. But the fact that Republicans call themselves the party of law and order, but as soon as somebody rich and powerful is actually held accountable for their crimes, 3 in 4 of them say the verdict made them feel less confident in the system, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. Again, the fact that Donald Trump has been able to sow so much distrust in our legal and judicial system is not good for our country, but I guess good for someone who is a wannabe dictator. And then this number, 70% of GOP voters, as well as 43% of independents, say they believe the conviction was driven by motivation to damage Trump's political career. Firstly, there has been no evidence of that whatsoever, so that also shows us that the right-wing spin machine has been working. People like Sean Hannity have been going going on Fox News since before the trial even began, saying this was politically motivated, it was a sham, that the judge was conflicted. So to see that reflecting in voters is also kind of concerning. But also the fact that 49% of independents think Trump should drop out, that is also no small number. That is a big number. It probably should be a little bit higher, but so far that is a win. Fox News also covered this in their own way. They said Trump verdict makes significant number of Republicans less likely to support him. And this is a separate poll from Reuters and Ipsos. A survey of registered voters shows what Americans think about Donald Trump's guilty verdict. And Fox News reads, a poll conducted immediately following former President Trump's criminal conviction in New York found a significant number of Republicans say they are less likely to vote for him in November. 1 in 10 registered GOP voters say Trump's felony conviction for falsifying business records would make them less likely to support him for president, according to a Reuters/Ipsos poll that closed on Friday. The two-day poll was conducted hours after a jury in Manhattan on Thursday found Trump guilty on all counts brought against him by DA Alvin Bragg. The poll also found that a majority of Republican voters, 56%, said the outcome of the case would have no effect on their vote, and 35% say they were even more likely to support Trump, who maintains his innocence. So to break down these numbers, 1 in 10 registered GOP voters say that the conviction makes them less likely to vote for him. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. That is no small number. 10% may seem like a small number in the grand scheme of things, but if you zoom out a little bit, 10% of Republicans abstaining from voting or voting down ballot on everybody except for Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, that could sway the outcome of the election. But again, we see this distrust entrenched so deeply within the Republican Party that 56% of them immediately said this would have no effect on their vote, and then 35% said they were even more likely to vote for Donald Trump. It's worth pointing out that we do have a brand new batch of swing state polls coming our way by the end of this week or early next week, so I will go over those as well. We also saw 3 brand new polls coming out showing Biden with a very slight edge, which we didn't see a few weeks back. So a new Ipsos Reuters poll that I was just quoting went from even to Biden +2. Biden is now up by 2 points. A Harris/Forbes poll said Biden went from -2 to -2, so it was unchanged. That's not too good. And then a Morning Consult poll that is done weekly went from -1 to +1. So there is a slight swing right there in those polls, and we're only about 4 or 5 days out from the conviction. So as time goes on, I assume we will see Biden gain even more of an edge. I mean, we can only hope. But if you enjoyed this polling breakdown video and want me to make more, all you have to do is leave a like on this video, comment a blue heart if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, have a great day yourself.